In order to understand references, you need to understand the distinction between a variable that contains a reference and a variable that contains a value. A reference is a variable that refers to a value, as opposed to a variable that contains a value. So this is a variable as we understand them so far. The variable contains the value, whereas a reference variable contains a reference that refers to a value. This is probably best explained by example. In the Chapter 11 References folder in your exercise folders, go ahead and make a copy of refs.pl, and we'll just call this example.pl. Open that up, and here we have a variable that contains a value, and in this case the value is a string, and the string says this is the Perl 5 References chapter, and then we print out the variable using the message function, and if we go ahead and run this, you'll see that it prints out this nice string. Now, a reference refers to the variable, so it uses this reference operator and then the variable itself. And so now what we have is a variable called ref that refers to this variable here. And so the value of this is the reference. If we print out ref, if we just say $ref here, what you'll see is Perl's representation of the reference, which looks like that, scalar and an address. So this is referring to a scalar variable because var is a one-dimensional scalar variable, whereas ref simply points to the value in that variable. And so I can actually look at the value of it by using another $sign. And so what this first $sign, what that does is it says, show me the scalar that is referred to by this reference. And if I then save that and run it, then we get that value there. The advantage of this is that as I pass things around in my program and I make copies of them and I pass them into functions and return values and such, I don't have to pass around a whole lot of data. I can just pass around the reference. So if I make a copy of the reference, I now have another variable that contains a reference to the same place, and I can print out from that copy and I still get the same value, but all I've copied is the reference. I haven't copied all of these bytes. So let's say this is like a whole lot of data or some very complicated structure of data. I don't have to copy all of that. I can just copy the reference. I can pass the reference to a function or subroutine. I can do all kinds of things with it. In fact, if I print out the value of ref here, and then I go down here and I change variable to something else, and then I message it again or message the copy of it. Now I haven't changed the reference and I haven't changed the copy. All I've changed is this variable. When I print it out the second time, we'll get the new value. So the first time it prints out the string and the second time it prints out the number. So references are extremely powerful, and they're a little bit complicated because you have to think in this indirect way about what's going on. But what the reference is just a pointer to the place where the data is, whereas the variable actually contains the data. So in this chapter, we're going to see some examples of how references are used in a more powerful way, especially by using array references and hash references, which are the most common types of references. And then later on in the course, when we start talking about object-oriented programming, you'll see that Perl's object model is built entirely on top of this concept of references. So where a variable contains a value, a reference points to a value.